Hi fellas, a little bit different today. I'm going to do a mid-build review of AFV Club's Churchill. I've already started it, and I'll get to why, including, don't really want to dump everything out of the box, but this is their Mark 6 with the 75mm gun. No, I'll get to it. I've already started, and I'll explain why. So when I opened up the instructions, this is what I got, and these are all real springs. You got a little baggie full of springs. Very different from the German armor, American armor, everything else. For me, it's been a unique build. And I took a look at all this stuff and just went, oh boy. So I thought I'd get started into this stuff and then do a review. And I found a couple of things. It's not a bad kit. I'll go through the basics. It's good molding. There is a little bit of flash, usually in the worst possible spots. Let's see if I can find some. Hopefully this will pick it up. There's a little bit of flash in the areas like this. Hopefully the camera's picking that up. Let me check. Areas like this. Around this opening. That's a concern because that's not actually a glue surface, and it will be butted up against another part to form your workable suspension. Which is the good news about this. It's also the problem. This thing comes with rubber tracks, which is actually good. They're very nicely done. It's having a little bit of a hypnotic effect on me, sorry. Now, here's one that I've built up to partially step 5. You do this twice. These all are fully workable if it's done right. So in conjunction with the rubber tracks, you can pose this any way you want on a diorama. So one of the issues, it also comes with a metal barrel, by the way. Which isn't, I actually had to file off a little bit of the metal on the end of the barrel to make it fit. It's a very tight fit. And I didn't take it back out, I just glued it from the back. They also give you a fair bit of photo etch. Oops. There's all the photo etch. And it's open because you needed one. I don't know if the camera will pick it up. You're actually using a piece of photo etch for the machine gun barrel shroud in there. If you see it. Very unnecessary. It's not really going to be seen, but it is what it is. But anyway, you got a metal barrel in it. Sorry, bouncing back and a bit back and forth. Some more covering what I have done so far. Anyway, this one is up to about here. The springs, my concern was the springs were going to want to propel these things out. They do fortunately sit in the one half if you place them carefully. So you can put your second piece down, clamp it together, check all your springs for movement, make sure they're not bound up, and then get in with some glue very carefully, because the glue, if you guys are picking this up, can potentially seep back in from your joint and pin these. So not only would I be careful gluing this, but I would make a point of working the springs just to break any little bond at the beginning. So this part is not hard, just a little tedious. You do have to clamp carefully with this. Mine wanted to slip off all the time, but that's my equipment issue. Now, where it gets interesting is this part. I'll show you this. First off, what I would actually call an engineering fail is these pieces. They could have molded this in one piece. Instead, they give it to you in two pieces. And the joint in there, which is, you're not even going to see that it's so small, is this one here. I'll flip it over in a second. So if we turn it over, that's the joint there. And your overlap is about 1 millimeter on each side, and it does have a little bit of a tooth, a notch to form sort of a T-junction to help keep it aligned. But it's so flimsy, it's so easy. If you get this off kilter, you're gonna have nothing but problems with the rest of it. So this is definitely something: glue, make sure it's straight, lay it down flat, and leave it until it's dry completely. And there's no reason why it couldn't have been molded like this. They're just building a weakness into the kit. But if you're careful and take your time, you can work around it. Now, the other problem is this piece, its sister. There's not much, I don't know if I'll pick it up. Some of these pieces have a little rib in the back. This one, this one, this one, which helps you get the height, and the guide, the channel, has the matching spot. So you're getting at least a little bit of support from that rib for side to side like this. The majority of them, there's nothing there. It's just a 90-degree joint, and you've got to hope to get it right. And then the two end ones at the front also have little ribs, which helps a little bit. Now you have to take the almost spade looking things, these, and hook them in. The instructions probably do a better job of showing it. This onto your pivot points. Now, what I was hoping to do was just put all the little bucket or spade shapes in and then glue it down, and it wasn't going to work. These things were flopping around, they were falling off. You need to turn this upside down in order to make sure that you've got your alignment with these slots. So what I ended up doing, and everything just wanted to come apart, and that was just starting with one. So what I did was I put it together dry, got the first spade in, glued this joint, sort of at the beginning of things. That I left it with the first spade in there to dry up, so I at least had one anchor point. And then I put in the next one, glued that joint, left it for a couple of minutes, put in the next one, because this thing is so thin. See, you've got just enough flex that even with the one or your previous one installed, you've still got enough flex to just open that joint up enough to slip your spade in and catch those pins. Then you have to take that assembly once it's done and mount it on top of this piece to form one of these. Which I really like the look of this. I only have the one side of wheels in. Once these ones are installed on this side, I think it reminds me of a centipede or a millipede. Lots of little legs. You've got compression on some of the springs already. which makes this difficult. I'm still fighting with this one. I'm going to have to strip this out a bit and re-glue it. But you're trying to get this down. There's only 2 very small notches to show you where you have to fix everything. Hopefully the camera picks this up. Let's try this. You've got very small guide marks along there, which, with the shadows created from putting the other assembly down, you can't really see. And again, you're fighting the springs, so I think it's the same thing. Glue it at one end, and then once that's dry, once you've got a fixed anchor point, work your way down, pinning it along the way as you go. Because the other problem with this is, if you try and just do it this way, try and mount it as they show in the diagram, the spades collapse. They fall on themselves. They go in the wrong way. So what you actually have to do is do it like this. Set the spades. That's not their term, but that's what they look like to me. Get them into the right location. Take the second piece, put it in, then you can flip it over and hopefully start to work on getting it all together. Okay. So it's doable. It's going to turn out to be a great kit if you want to build a diorama with it, because of the workable tracks and workable suspension. These are not bad. Let you get a good look. That is the inside of them. That's the outside. We'll skip ahead a bit. So that's where I am. Not the huge issues I expected, but you do have to be careful and plan your moves and understand what you're doing. So looking ahead is a good idea, which is another issue or decision to be made. I'm considering painting these sets before they go on, because once they go on with the sponsons and everything on the tank, it's going to be really hard to get paint in where you want it to go, which is probably why the rubber tracks are a little bit better than individual link, or especially something that you would freeze in place like Magic Track, because as you can see, you're going to be completely sealing it in place. So you either have to build it all up with the track in place, paint it, and then come back and paint the track on the tank, or at least with using rubber tanks, hopefully you can feed it through or leave a big enough one-piece panel off to get it in easily. I'm not that far along to have worked out that issue. Instructions are clear. They're not cluttered. There's not too much going on in each step. There's a lot of steps, and there's a lot of work on this hull. See, this is them just quickly showing you putting on the tracks at step 19. And then you start to seal it in, the top part anyway, with all the different sponsons and extensions and covers. So it may end up being using a bit of string with a little washer on it, drop down behind here, holding it upside down, letting it rattle down, come out there, and then tying the track to the string and pulling it through. I'm not sure how I'm going to handle that. But so yeah, we're up to 24 steps just on the hull, which is detail stuff. If it hasn't bashed anything. and then it's the turret. I jumped ahead a little bit on the turret because I was waiting for everything to dry, and I also wanted to see if some figures I had in mind for this were going to fit leaning against the hull. I'm still not sure if they will or they won't. Then there's almost nothing in comparison on the turret. It's only about 6 steps for the turret as compared to the 24, 25 for the main part of the tank. And they don't give you any antennas or any metal. Your tow cable is just a bit of thread that's buried somewhere in the box, or tied in with the open screws. So I'm not going to get it out, but it's just a piece of white thread, or string, whatever you want to call it. They give you a fair bunch of decals, which are nice. Some of them, you can't see it, there's actually white letters here. All of the letters have a big surround, so you are running a larger risk of silvering if you don't get it right. Just be warned. And then the painting, they give you 5 versions. Every single one is body colored dark green. Even the one in Italy, apparently they couldn't be bothered repainting anything to match the terrain. So it's, you paint it green, and then it's just different decals for different units. So this one, I'm not sure how this compares to the Tamiya one. This is, to me, very complex, yet simple enough if you slowly follow the instructions. Take care of what you're doing. I think the other thing I should mention is I'm gluing this down. There's only a tiny spot of glue on each one of these, just to hold it in place, so that as I'm working with it, getting it together, it'll hold on one side, and I can already see a couple of them aren't straight, which isn't a huge deal. What it means is I'm just gonna, as I get to, say, this one, which I can tell is not straight, I'm just gonna put a little bit of Tamiya extra thin in there as I glue it down on this side. That way I can force it a little bit more easily and get everything to straighten up. But to try and work with this stuff all wet, if you want to view it that way, trying to put this together with these, with still some flexibility because the joint's wet, get those spades or those rocker arms in and fit the other piece on top is not going to work. You just, pieces will go everywhere. So you're going to have to step by step it and glue it as you go. So it's very different from Panzer IVs or Tigers or modern tanks in layout and also in the way they've done it. But it's just actually kind of neat to sit and play with the suspension. It's also time consuming just to get up to what you see here. I think it took me about 6 hours yesterday, because you've got to let stuff dry as you go, such as these parts. I was telling you, this joint has to be completely dry before you can proceed. You want to let this, you want to make sure stuff like this is completely dry, because you don't want any of these springs coming loose and then having to try and refit it when the majority of it's dry. So you want to use the glue sparingly, but you want to make sure it's really dry before you move on, that you've got a solid piece to work with. Because as I said, when you put the other piece on, you're putting these under a little bit of compression as you go. So you've got lots of stuff to fight. So the main tip, I guess, with this is keep looking ahead, further in the instructions, so that you know what you've got coming up. Because once this joins in with your spades, try to get a little bit closer. Unfortunately, I am missing the extra wheels. The top of the spring forms one half of this tunnel. You can see it a little bit there. That's the top of the spring, and this is the spade. And the axle runs right through both, forming the hinge. So the worst thing you can do with one of these, I haven't figured it out yet, it's not a big deal. These are directional as well. You can see there's your tubing or tunneling on this side, but nothing over here. I think I've got it right on this one. You might have to turn these around 180 degrees to match up with the spade part, which might need to occupy here. So if you accidentally glue one of these things in, there might not be much in the way of fixing the model without major surgery. So you really have to make sure these things stay loose and workable, at least until you got it to this point. And as you can see, that'll be the outside. So we're missing the outside wheels along here. It'll be about the same. Trying to get paint in on those hinges from this side with the wheels on. It's going to be a major problem, especially with the tank and the track in the way. So I'm probably going to put these wheels on, continue building up this side until it matches, and then I'll take a couple of the side pieces and figure out if I am going to be able to get some paint in there. What I'm kind of disappointed about is not really being able to paint things easily and then add in the springs. I'd like to leave the springs in that color if I could, and paint the rest just to highlight the fact that they're there. And I may go back once it's all in the green and paint the springs black just to highlight that they're there. I say may because it's going to be a tedious amount of work trying to paint these springs. Fortunately, they don't spin on you. They're not that loose in there. So it's not like you're going to put the paint on and the paintbrush is just going to drag them in a circle. Anyway, so for anybody considering one of the AFV Churchills, because they all seem to be the same regardless of which version of the Churchill you go with, it's going to be a slow building kit, but it's going to be an interesting build. Hopefully that helps you guys decide if you want to do one or not. Have a good day.